Here we are with Mrs. Adepeju Oyesanya and the baby doll. Hello, baby doll. How are you? Hello. You are not a newborn. You are sitting up.
See, because I've only been positioned this way.
Okay. Well, I hope if you are a newborn, I hope mommy is supporting your head.
Yes, very much so. Let me correctly hold my newborn.
What we're going to talk about today is more of the issues and challenges that arise in our culture where breastfeeding is as yet not the established norm that it should be. And, you know, Adepeju is going to give us some insights, explanations, and advice so that we'll be better equipped to breastfeed our babies. So, I will start by mentioning that a lot of women give up on breastfeeding very, very early in the game.
Yes.
A lot of women, when you ask them why they didn't breastfeed, will explain that they just didn't have any milk. But when you listen more carefully to the story, you realize that they made that decision within the first few days of baby being born. And I think one of the challenges is women don't realize that in the first few days, especially in the first day, the newborn baby really doesn't need much milk. And here what happens, because they perceive that they don't have any milk, because the milk often doesn't come in immediately, they reach for the formula. And because the baby has a sucking reflex, a natural biological urge to suckle, the baby will take the bottle and will consume the formula. And therefore it reinforces the belief and the concept that the baby was hungry and wanted that ounce of formula. So you know, we have an issue here not realizing that all baby needed was the opportunity to suckle and be close to the mother, and maybe just get a little bit of that colostrum that is usually present at the time of birth. So you take it away, Adepeju. Tell us about breastfeeding in the first 24 hours.
Oh, you've set me up very well, Dr. Jones, and I thank you for that. I think what we really need to discuss really is stomach size. I think a lot of people
Stomach size,
yeah.
okay.
I'm going to actually start from that perspective. This is a baby's stomach at birth.
And that looks like probably less than an inch in diameter. Yeah. The size of a mothball, maybe.
Yeah.
Large mothball.
I dropped this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and you know why nature made it this way? Because nature made colostrum. A lot of women also need to realize, and again, I cannot overstress the importance of education. You're not going to get milk on day one. You're going to get colostrum. We call it liquid gold. And with that liquid gold, it helps.
Liquid gold.
Yeah.
So
liquid gold, and the reason why we call it liquid gold is because it's yellowish in color, so it looks like gold. And literally, it is gold. It's gold in many ways. Gold currently has high value right now.
Always has throughout history.
Throughout history, even more so with the current economic situation. So hold on to your gold. It's valuable.
Yeah.
Your liquid gold also in your breast is just as valuable.
More so?
Yes. Because you have a human. Yes.
That's right.
And that's called colostrum. What that helps to do is it coats the stomach. So it's also going to act as a laxative.
It's coating the stomach of the baby.
Yes,
and acting as a laxative. That's what the colostrum is doing.
So it's doing two things for you. It's going to help pass the dark tarry stool called meconium.
Right. The dark tarry stool.
Yes.
That the babies
have.
Yeah, that they
they'll pass
the first few days,
right?
Meconium. That's right.
In addition, it also acts as an antibody, so it's coating their gut, which really is their stomach.
Right.
So it's helping against gastro and all those other issues they're facing. So you're doing two things in one by feeding a child colostrum.
So you're getting the laxative and you're getting the immune
coating.
protection.
Yeah, the immune
but are you getting anything else? Is there any nutrients in the colostrum? So
yes. So I forgot that the food component. The child is being fed. So they're taking in the colostrum, and it's acting as a nutrient. It's feeding them. I mean, we don't want this, but a child can go a couple days actually without, eating because they have a fat packet within their bodies that actually let them go a couple hours without eating.
But isn't there a certain degree of hydration that the baby's born with due to maybe amniotic fluid in the system?
Yes.
Forgive me if I'm wrong. I might be one here or where I might be a little rusty. But what I'm saying is the colostrum is not a large volume. So the baby isn't going to be dehydrated in the first few days.
Not at all.
So there's no need for water or formula in the first few days.
No, and there's no need for water or formula ever in this child's life.
For the first 6 months.
Ever.
Well, okay, I agree that there's no need for formula ever, except for rare cases.
Yes, where there's medical conditions that
Yes, which require
Yes.
that you are unable to, or
Yes.
shouldn't breastfeed or
Right.
But you do need water at some point.
Yeah, you're gonna need water.
Yeah.
We're not talking about water. We
Yeah.
said formula.
Yeah,
formula is not
okay,
water.
Good. I agree.
Right.
So the water comes in when you start to wean the baby onto solids.
Yes, and
Right.
that's later on,
Agreed.
which is beyond our scope of this conversation.
That's beyond the scope.
Yes.
Right. Because we're talking about the first few days.
Yes,
Yes.
and actually the first couple of
Right.
weeks. But right now, the first couple of days. And so the first couple of days, our stomach is like this, right? On day 1. So we have our liquid gold colostrum. It's coating, it's being antibodies for the baby, protecting them, giving their first immunity shot. So think that even before they go to the doctor for their first shot, they already got a shot.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A natural shot.
A natural immunization
Yeah,
shot.
no need for a shot.
No
dose.
need
That's
at
right.
all, right? So this is what we've achieved on day 1 by providing colostrum. So again, moms and dads, grandmas, aunties, all those co-partners with us, there is no need for formula, and the baby's being fed with colostrum.
Yeah.
Okay? I think I want to really emphasize that this is the size of
the
child's
baby's newborn stomach.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's no need to put a whole ounce of formula in it.
No, and that's the
Just
thing.
because you think that your breasts
Right.
aren't heavy with milk.
Milk. And
Yeah.
in addition to that, what you're actually doing, this is why research is showing the link more so with obesity and, like I said, the first hour of nutrition, is that you then are expanding this child's stomach beforehand. So in a way, unfortunately, formula feeding, because you mentioned in the stomach, I always like to tell moms, remember some moms especially will see the child's hand, fist, they've been in there for the 9 months, sucking their hand, sucking this, sucking that, so they have that natural tendency to suck. So if you put anything in their mouth,
They're going to suckle.
They're going to
That's
suck.
right. So if you put a date in the mouth, they're going to start to suckle
They're
the
gonna
date.
suckle that.
You put your thumb or your finger, clean
will-
finger in the baby's mouth. You
They'll
get the
suckle.
suckling reflex.
Yes.
That's right.
Regardless if they want to. So you put that formula in the child's mouth, they're going to want to suckle that. And what you're actually doing is you're putting them at a higher rate for obesity long term versus letting the natural occurrence go, which is day 1, and we give them the colostrum, and that will satiate them. We're effectively breastfeeding. I want to talk about day 1 also. Day 1 for most women, more than 90% of women in Trinidad and Tobago happens in the hospital.
Day 1 happens in the hospital for most women in Trinidad and Tobago. That's correct.
And that's worldwide, actually.
Worldwide at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment.
Yeah.
Even in the U.S., it is more than 90% of
What
births
about
happen
in the so-called underdeveloped countries?
I'm not sure about those statistics.
Yeah, that's very different community anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, very different.
That, but I know comparable statistics for the U.S. and here is that more than 90% of births actually happen in hospitals. So hospitals now
Probably
have
more than 95%.
I would think so, actually.
Yes.
You know, happen in hospitals.
Yeah, so
they have a bigger role to play. Because if we want the baby to have the colostrum, we want mother to understand this is the best feed for her child.
Yes.
And the hospitals also are going to have to partner with us.
Yes.
So that they're going to have to show mom, right, the proper latch-on. And showing her how the baby properly latches on. The hospital act as an assistance to us. In the sense that they're providing support, which helps to reduce her anxiety.
So that means the staff at the hospitals need to be excited about getting their moms leaving the hospital with a latch-on.
Yes.
Well, with a baby that knows how to latch on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you know, within nature you always find a range of normal. And there are times when you try, but for whatever reason you don't succeed immediately. Like I remember with my first son, you know, we had a normal, natural delivery, no drugs, and I had some time with him in the first hour of his life, but he didn't learn to latch on properly for a whole 48 hours.
And that's where community help comes in.
You know, that's where community help
That's
comes in.
what goes back to our list that we discussed.
And I really didn't have someone like a doula or a midwife or a lactation consultant that I had arranged in advance to make sure that baby latched on in the first 24 hours. I didn't. I really didn't.
And that, again, is we're changing that. The goal really is to educate, to empower people to make different choices, that they have options. So if you're unable to get that latch on in the hospital, which is the optimal, right?
Yeah.
We'd really like you either to have a lactation person come in the hospital within first 24 hours, or your midwives, or the hospital facility to provide assistance to you directly to help the latch on. Even like in your case, the first 48 hours didn't work out. If someone was able to follow up with you at home after discharge, to give you the support you needed, that makes a big difference. Again, we talked about anxiety. Any way we can help the mother reduce
And I was
anxiety.
anxious. I was anxious in the first few
Of course.
days.
You know, you're a mom. It's the first time we're doing this.
Yeah.
Even the second and third time, I would like to argue you don't feel any otherwise. We're still bringing a new life. We still have all these hormones and things that we're going through. And again, the more assistance and support that we can get, the more positioned we are for success. The more positioned the mother is for
Right,
success.
and in the end, it was because I had support that it was easier to persevere. I had the support of my husband, had the support of my mother, who had the experience of breastfeeding her 2 babies, and I had a little bit. Eventually, I realized I needed more support, and that's where I called lactation counselor.
Right. You see?
So I needed the support. I
You
made
need the
the
support network, and again, that's why I really emphasize that people create and know the support, so that you're not scrambling around for numbers. If something's happening, you know, again, how am I going to solve my problem? I'm going to call X or Z or Y, and they're going to come here. We're going to work it out together, and we're going to work on resolving this issue. But again, the hospitals can, for our biggest assistance, help in the lactation process by getting the latch on or showing mom or giving herself confidence. That will help when she leaves the hospital continue on the journey of breastfeeding. You see, once you leave the hospital, you're gonna get this is like day 3 of the stomach, right? Around day 3, we like to say.
day 3. So
yes.
this is different.
Yeah, day 3.
Yeah, let's do the comparison. This is
day
1, and this is day 3. This is with breastfeeding.
Yeah, breastfeeding.
Right. Okay.
Right. So around day 3, our stomach is like this. Milk should start coming in now, and that's good for women to understand. Your colostrum will transition to like milk.
Yes.
Right. So it's not day 1, which is in your hand that you're gonna get milk. You're gonna get colostrum, or liquid cold. Around day 3 and even up to day 5, I want to emphasize that even up to day 5, you can get your milk coming in. Your milk will come in, the baby will continue to suckle. And I want to really emphasize again the point of effective breastfeeding. Not that the baby is nipple feeding, which will get a fussy baby, a lethargic baby, a baby that looks, dehydrated, not very active.
If the baby is nipple feeding as opposed to breastfeeding, so the baby is sort of mincing
Suckling.
away at that nipple.
Yes.
Mincing is maybe not the right word, but nibbling away,
Yes.
gnawing away at the
Sucking,
nipple.
but not actually getting to the hind milk. The baby will have signs, and reduced output. So that is
reduced
a signal
output of urine
and stool.
Yeah.
Right? And that's again the point of education. You know what to anticipate and what to expect. You're better positioned again to say, hey, this is not normal. How do I get home? And you call someone. You say, okay, these are some of my concerns. Am I thinking correctly? Can you help me analyze it? And you and that person will work it out together.
You talked about some of the roles of. Anyway, you finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, around day 10.
Day 10. Ooh, well, that's a big difference.
Day 1. Day 3.
Yeah.
Day 10.
Wow.
We've
come a long way.
Of a breastfed baby. Now, when you add formula, it changes this whole stomach.
Okay.
And again, that's why we're linking that with lactation, what you're actually helping you to do is prevent obesity.
So what happens to the formula?
Like anything else. If you are accustomed to eating 2 slices of toast,
Yes.
and every morning you eat 2 slices
Then
of
that's
toast.
what your body expects.
Now, let's say today you decide I'm going to jump it up, I'm going to eat 8. And then in another 3 hours
So your body
or so,
starts to respond to that.
yes, you say, you know what, I'm going to jump it again, I'm going to eat 10. And you go to 14, you go to 15, you eat 20
Your body
pieces.
starts to prepare for that.
Your body, like this ball that I can open, it continues to expand.
Right.
As your stomach's expanding, you too are literally expanding. And then we get to obesity and high blood pressure.
I know that proteins and sugars in human breast milk are different from that in formula. Even though formula does attempt to approximate the breast milk, it can't really do it. And certainly you don't have certain protective living factors like your antioxidant substances and your immunoglobulins, your immune protectors. But what I believe, I've always said this, is that when you introduce formula as opposed to facilitating breastfeeding, you start the baby's metabolism on the wrong foot, which is why you have an increased incidence of the metabolic conditions with formula feeding as opposed to extensive breastfeeding.
Right.
Extensive breastfeeding meaning the ideal of exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, continued breastfeeding as a supplement to the weaning process for, I would say, well, we can talk about that at a separate point.
Yes.
How long you breastfeed, well, that's a different discussion.
Yes.
And, you know, in the first few days, I know one of the things that goes wrong is that when baby starts to respond naturally and normally to the breast milk by having, in many cases, frequent stools. Some babies are gonna poop every single time you breastfeed them. Some babies are gonna do that. And it's usually gonna be soft and watery, and the baby's not gonna be constipated. Now, I shouldn't say watery, soft and liquid. But the reason I understand soft and liquid is because most of the solid substances from the breast milk are efficiently absorbed by by the baby, because the milk is meant for the baby. It's not meant to be wasted. It's meant, as most things in nature, to be efficiently used. So you have that efficiency. But if the mother and the grandmother and the sister and the daddy, and sometimes, sad to say, the health professional, is not aware that this is the normal stool of the breastfeeding baby, sometimes they think the baby has diarrhea.
Yeah, and there's actually two things I want that we can take from the point you just made.
Yes.
Not only is there misdiagnosis of diarrhea, sometimes there's also misdiagnosis of hunger because of the frequent feeds.
Yes.
Because you mentioned that it's so efficiently absorbed that if you're a breastfeeding mom and you don't have proper information, you're going to think, wait a second, my child is feeding every hour and a half, 2 hours, while X baby is sleeping 3 hours straight.
That's right. And an X baby is using formula, or is just a different baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
More likely, X baby is using formula.
But not always, huh? Sometimes it's just that I've seen well, you know that sometimes you got two breastfeeding babies, and the babies have different sleeping patterns.
They do, but we emphasize that if a child is not waking up, especially like the days that we're talking about, the first, couple weeks that you wake them up, you don't let them go 3 hours, because we also don't undergo dehydration and other health issues.
Right, so that's the concern. That's why you wake them up.
So we wake them up. So, for example, that formula-fed child is sleeping 3 hours or more. Your child is getting up, wanting to feed every hour and a half to 2 hours initially. We're not talking about the whole 6 months.
Yeah, in the first few weeks.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks. And you are like concerned because you're like, wait a second, am I making enough milk? Why is this child always hungry? The point that you made earlier, that it's so well absorbed.
Well absorbed.
That well absorption leaves for two things: little waste, if there's any, and or waste that's sufficiently removed because of the frequent stool feeding, right? And also the absorption happens in a way that allows for more frequent feeds. So that's why we said earlier it's 8 minimum to 12 times that a child will feed that's 100% breastfed, versus our counterpart over here who's getting non-human milk.
Yeah.
That they may feed and sleep longer, but that's because their body's taking the time to break down all these proteins and non-natural items that have been introduced into their immune system.
One of the ways I've understood it is, what you're saying here, the protein in the formula is so different from what the baby's body really expects and needs, that the baby has to use its energy to sleep and digest that protein.
Yes.
It takes longer, and that's why they sleep more. But I do believe, especially if it's not your first baby and you've got to take the other one to school, and sometimes husbands work long hours, usually they don't take long maternity leave. I do believe it can be challenging nursing a baby the reality is that in the first few weeks, some nursing babies are going to be wanting to nurse every hour and a half, every 2 hours. It is challenging. Do you have any suggestions?
I suggest, moms, and that's again why I say, you have 9 months to prepare for this birth. The birth is not going to happen instantaneously. So I think that you need to put in place certain supporting mechanisms.
Right. But that means that your family have to support the breastfeeding concept so that they're willing to help you out in these first few weeks.
And that's why we talked out, and I will always emphasize that for the first 9 months of the pregnancy, because I always consider those couple weeks after the continuation of the pregnancy, the first 9 months of pregnancy, create your support system. They know your desire to breastfeed. Include them and say, hey, this is what it's going to entail of all of us for this to be successful. So instead of people coming over, and I always say this to new expectant parents, don't come over
empty-handed. Yes, bring a pot of pilau, bring a pot of soup.
Yes, bring something that I can put in the freezer.
Yes.
So even if my husband or my partner doesn't come home, or someone's hungry, or I myself am hungry, I can easily heat something up. If my laundry needs to be done, instead of saying, oh, I'll hold the baby, you can do a load of laundry for me.
You're supposed to be holding that baby in the first few weeks. Everybody wants to hold your baby. That's something crazy in the culture. The baby usually wants the mother to hold it.
Right.
Don't be polite and give away your crying baby just because you don't want to offend the adult. This is baby's emotional needs that you need to address.
And we need to talk about those things.
We need to talk about these things. We need to iron out the things in the culture that don't support the baby.
Right. That don't support really the bonding process that needs to occur in the first couple of weeks. But inclusive of that is, in the 9 months, say, okay, I know you live X away from me. You're the closest to me. Maybe for the first week, do you mind bringing food or lunch or this
or you can rotate your friends. So you don't want to make, people are busy nowadays. You don't want to ask one person to help you for 2 months.
I said a week.
That's right.
A
week.
A
week.
So we can negotiate that. But remember, you have 9 months to negotiate all these things. I really think that we need to do better planning.
Planning,
I think that's what it takes.
You see, we take the pregnancy kind of lightly. We don't realize, we prepare for the physical presence of the baby, the pain, the room, the bassinet,
diaper bags, everything.
But we don't always prepare for the psychosocial realities. And we need to start working on that.
And the baby's coming, and we need to put things in place. Again, I really think like the greatest way we defeat lactation is not providing the proper support all around us so that we can really do this. So like you mentioned earlier, you keep proper nutrition for the mother, proper nutrition for the baby. We're getting proper rest, That too is also going to allow
proper rest. That's right.
I want to talk about mastitis and engorgement.
So what is mastitis?
Well, let's go back to what's engorgement.
Okay.
So your milk is coming in, right? I like to say coming in. Remember, we have colostrum. So let's say around day 3, your milk is starting to arrive. Someone will get the sensation of fullness in their breast and more heaviness, right? That usually is an indication that more milk is coming in. Now, remember I used a phrase earlier called effective breastfeeding.
Yes.
Effective breastfeeding means that the baby is removing the milk. I must also say this is a mistake that most people believe in. A breast is never empty. A breast always has milk in it.
Yeah, a lactating
breast always has milk. What we say is
there's always some.
Yes. The milk is being removed, but it's also being replaced
at the same time.
So the baby is effectively removing the breast, right?
Which is stimulating
production, which is stimulating more production. And like sense, I always use the analogy lately that think of your breast like wasa.
Wasa.
Yes. And the wasa brings piped water into our homes. So that piped water. If wasa turns off the pipe of the main valve, which sometimes they do, and it's a little wasa, no water in valve saying today, right? So we all know valve saying on this street that we have no water because wasa is water pipes, right? Think of lactation the same manner. Your breast is the wasa station. Your breast says, hey, I'm turning off water. What actually happens is the milk is being turned off because the baby's not effectively breastfeeding, right? So the breast gets engorged because the pipes, which are all the ducts in the breast, want to bring out the water, want the water to flow out of the breast, which is the milk.
Yes.
So now then, the water pipes, which are now cut off, the milk is sitting in the breast. Now it's engorged, it's hard because the milk is not coming out.
It's not being emptied properly.
So therefore, the baby's not effectively breastfeeding. You are more likely to get engorgement. I like to tell women engorgement is not natural.
So engorgement is the breast being full and heavy and maybe painful.
Yes.
Well, painful.
Painful, right? Rather than, like I said earlier, you have to know the different feeling. You have a feeling of fullness.
Yeah, fullness is different
than
engorgement.
The engorgement tells us, again, I said there's certain indicators in lactation that you should look at. It tells us that the milk isn't being properly emptied so that there's a block, right? That engorgement can mastitis is when you get flu-like symptoms.
Mastitis is when you get flu-like symptoms.
A high fever, you get swollen breast, and you get heart rate, depending upon your skin tone. And that's a different thing. That's when we get into infection.
Right. So the mastitis is when the engorgement gets worse. It's not dealt with at the right time. You haven't been able to get the baby to empty the breast properly, and you go from engorgement to having swollen, painful areas in the breast.
Warm breast, flu-like symptoms.
Warm, flu-like symptoms meaning headache, body pain,
and chills. And all
chills.
that.
Wow.
Okay.
And do you need antibiotics at that point?
You may.
You may. Okay.
Again,
But that suggests if you need antibiotics, it means you've got an infection.
Right, and you may have an infection.
Right. So that can happen, but it's not usual.
It may not happen.
It may not happen.
That's why it needs. Then you need to go to your practitioner, medical practitioner, and have them properly diagnose which one it is.
Right. So you know if you need the antibiotics.
Yes.
Or not.
Because you can also fight mastitis without antibiotics.
Right.
But it just depends.
So you get the professional guidance at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
But one thing that is similar in both mastitis and engorgement is they should latch.
Whether you're latched on properly or not. I got you. You mean if you, you're right.
To latch on correctly, we decrease significantly the probabilities of going to engorgement or going to mastitis. Because the baby's effectively removing the milk from the breast.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So sometimes it's very simple, but again, because of lack of proper information, we don't know.
So in other words, engorgement is not a rite of passage. It's not something that has to happen.
No.
Because sometimes it's happened to so many of us that we think, well, this is just part of the getting started process.
You can bypass the engorgement. Like I said earlier, you can bypass the engorgement. You can bypass the cracked nipples. You can bypass the bleed. You can bypass the discomfort.
If you get the latch right. So getting the latch right is the key.
And that's why I said earlier, since more than 95% of pregnancies really will complete in a hospital setting, it's very important to have all the health practitioners at hospitals actively involved in being advocates of lactation. I think that it's not sufficient enough to tell women to breastfeed.
No.
I think we need to give them adequate support. Not only the baby deserving it, the baby are also deserving it, but our entire
Society.
deserving it. So we give the proper support so that we can bypass the experience. So we hear more stories where women don't have the passage of engorgement. Don't have the passage
So
of
you will have
mastitis.
more positive stories about getting started with breastfeeding. This brings us to another issue. After you've got the breastfeeding properly started, you're properly latched on, you're no longer feeling any anxiety because you and baby have a thing going. You've got the dance going. Sometimes what happens is that baby all of a sudden starts to nurse more often, and then you and those around you may start doubting, are you making enough milk? And I think that also happens sometimes even before that. Once baby's nursing regularly, people are saying you're going to be too tired, you're going to be too drained, you can't keep this up. Because they're comparing the every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours with the formula-fed baby who's feeding every 4 hours. So how do you, we sort of address that to some extent.
But let's just readdress it just to, again, solidify
Let's answer this question in particular. Many mothers resort to adding the formula because they believe they're not making enough milk.
And that actually works against you. And that's the first thing that I need to say. I mentioned earlier that breastfeeding really does supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Yes. If your body says to the brain, I demand more milk production, your breast will supply it. When you top up, as we like to use,
Top up with formula.
what happens is you tell your body, stop production. Your body will stop production. So instead of the baby
Or reduce production. Because you're going to produce
you're going to produce
proportion.
Yes, in proportion. But it's actually really stopping production because the thing is, if you have brought the baby to breast at the times the baby was demanding the breast, you would have said to your head, production continue, production escalate. When you don't bring the baby to breast and you top up, which then reduces the demand the baby has after the breast. Actually stop
Right.
production.
So in other words, the breast is going to produce less milk.
Yes, which stops
Because
the
you're
production.
stimulating it less because you're putting the baby
Yes.
on less.
Yes, because of the formula. Because the formula is going to keep the baby fed longer in quotes, therefore reducing the demand at the breast. So production stops, it ceases.
And you're potentially encouraging something called nipple confusion, which not all babies suffer from. But some babies who introduce both the breast and formula develop a preference for the formula simply because it takes less energy to get the milk from the bottle.
And that's how we say, if you're going to introduce a bottle, let it be after breastfeeding is well established.
Right.
Again, bottles should be introduced after breastfeeding is well
And preferably the
established.
bottle should contain breast milk.
Yes.
Yes.
Expressed human milk is
Expressed
what
human
should be in that bottle. But back to what we're talking about, the milk production. Because I really want to emphasize it. You had mentioned earlier that the mother now sees this child demand even more.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, especially when they're going through a growth spurt.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Right.
You took the words out of growth. A lot of people don't understand that growth spurts.
When is the growth
Six
spurt
weeks,
typically? 3 weeks and 6 weeks
Yeah.
babies have growth.
Right. Because we usually anticipate that babies can lose up to 7 to 10%, sometimes depending upon your practitioner, your nutrition or family practitioner, and your medical history. Maybe the signs of warning you get to 10%. We usually like to stay anywhere between 7 to we don't have to cross
Talk about
10.
body weight.
Body weight
Yeah.
of loss for the child after birth. It's
But that's what,
natural
in
for
the
a
first
baby.
week?
Yeah, it's natural for a baby to lose their body weight
A little bit.
a little bit, and go back to their body weight. We expect at least by 2 weeks they should return and or exceed their
Yeah.
birth weight.
But even though the pediatrician is the one who's going to be measuring these things, or the midwife, I would volunteer from my experience that if you have this confidence with the breastfeeding and you're getting it started and you get the latch right, you're barely going to notice, you're barely going to notice this loss of a small percentage of body weight while breastfeeding is getting
Right,
established.
and you have all the indicators. And that's again the point of education. I would like to
Indicators meaning baby's passing urine,
the
and it's
urine
not
and the stool
concentrated.
count.
And the
You know,
baby's alert when
the baby's alert, seem satiated at the breast and after
Satisfied,
feeds,
yeah.
tends to pull themselves off. That's what I'm saying. Breastfeeding is almost a science. Even though it's an art, it's a science. And the science comes in this aspect.
Mind you, you don't need to know the science. The science is just supportive.
But you need to know the science. Because if you know the science, you'll know when to call for help. The science is this.
You mean me? Okay, I'm listening.
The science is this.
Yeah.
You look at stool count, because that tells us you're in time. Right? So
Right.
you anticipate for each day of life, you have 1 stool the first day. Day 2, you have 2 stools. 3. Now, it's not
Okay, so
exact,
stool
exact,
is what we
but
call the
stool
numbers
count,
in sugar.
yes.
Your
Your stool count is telling us.
Yeah.
Your diaper count is telling us. Baby pulling themselves off, satiated. Milk or colostrum at the entry points of the mouth. Those are the science that you need to know.
So
You don't need
those
to know
are the signs that the mother can use to reassure herself that breastfeeding is
Those are the
established.
signs and the
Yeah.
science. You don't need to know the biological components of breastfeed and the lipids and all that.
Yeah, even though it's
All that.
exciting.
Yes, for doctors. But
Yeah.
as a parent, more
Yeah.
interesting to know the science and the signs to look for,
Yeah.
which are those things that tell us that we're
so
on
in
the
other
right
words,
track.
based on what we know about breastfeeding, which is what you might want to call the science, we
Yes.
expect certain signs
Yes.
which can reassure health practitioners and parents that everything is on track.
We're on the right trajectory.
Yeah.
Let's keep
Okay.
going. So when that extra demand occurs, you look at your clock, it's okay, 2 weeks, we're back at birth weight, 3 to 6 week, we're at a growth spurt, 3 months. All these things are indicators that we can use to help dictate to us where we're going.
Now, I'm going to have to close it off here because even though my mind is full of all sorts of other topics we can raise on this subject, because there's so many issues. There's bonding, and there's the fact that babies nurse for comfort, and there's the whole thing about, wearing your baby
Yes.
and sleeping with your baby in order to make breastfeeding less exhausting, because you can be sleeping or getting a few things done while baby's nursing. I'd love to talk more about these things, but we really have to go. So thank you so much.
We look forward to additional conversations.
And who knows, maybe we're gonna have some additional conversations. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
So thank you so much,
Thank
Adepeju.
you.